everybody to tonight's event, IIDA's East Bay City Center Forums. We're really happy to have you here as, kind of the kickoff of the forum series. So, on behalf of myself, the committee, Allie with Gensler, right over there, Paula, right back here, and Tim Haggerty also with Gensler, who couldn't join us tonight, unfortunately. We're very happy to put this together for you guys as the first, like I said, kickoff of the Wellness Forum series. So up here on the screen, you can see the 4 forums chapter events that are going to be coming up. This year's theme is Designing for Wellness, the overall IIDA theme, which is International Interior Design Association. Some people said that they didn't even know what the acronym was. So there you go. And
came anyway, we're glad.
Absolutely, but came anyway. And what a great turnout tonight. Thank you guys so much for coming. So like I said, IIDA every year puts on an overall theme. This year's theme is Designing for Wellness. So we're kicking off the Forums event, the Leaders Breakfast event, the Design in Motion event. Everything has that overall theme of Designing for Wellness this year in mind. So tonight, there we go, the next slide of Design in Motion, which is coming up May 31st. Fabi? You want to say a couple words about it? Fantastic.
Thanks, Dave. So Design in Motion is coming up in May. It's one of our largest charity event we do every year. So this year will be the 6th year, I was going to go 6 or 7, 6th year where we pick a charity that's in the East Bay that follows in line and is in line with our philanthropy. So because we are doing Design for Wellness, we found a wonderful charity here in Oakland called Urban Relief, and their mission is to bring nature and trees to underserved neighborhoods here in Oakland and as well as all around the East Bay. This year will be their 20th year, and they're quite an inspiring charity. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a phenomenal event. At the same time, during that event, we do a silent auction. And if you haven't been, and those that have can talk about it, because it's one of my favorite parts of the event. But if you haven't been, we have a lot of designers from the industry come in and design beautiful objects, whether it's a bag. But this year, we're doing flower centerpieces, terrariums. There's a wild card, so anyone can do whatever they want, and those will be auctioned off at the event. So I'm really looking forward to that. So the event will be on May 31st, so it's less than 2 months away, and we're still looking for sponsors. So if you are interested in sponsoring this amazing charity event that we do every year, please reach out to me or any of the East Bay City Center members. We are happy to take your money for Urban Relief. Anyways, thank you.
Yeah, so I do have to say that the Design in Motion event is like, it's the East Bay's version of Leaders Breakfast. It's so awesome. It's a sit-down dinner. We do we have a networking happy hour where everybody can have drinks and talk beforehand. And then, like Fabi just said, the silent auction. This year we're going to do a live auction as well. So it's really a lot of fun. In mentioning Design for Wellness and everything that we do put into planning, our committee, even focusing on this event for tonight, we really do kind of try to be thoughtful on every aspect of the planning of the program. Tonight, we even took into consideration the venue space, Oakstop, and thank you very much for Oakstop letting us use your space for tonight. The whole concept of Designing for Wellness, of using a space, this is a multifaceted use space, so it's art, it's meeting room, it's office, shared office space, and it's, again, part of the revitalization and development very quickly ongoing, of downtown Oakland. So with that said, we are kicking off our panel discussion on Designing for Wellness and how it is affecting the development of downtown Oakland. Our amazing panelists all bring a very unique perspective on the topic, and I'll just give a brief introduction to each person, welcome them, and then turn it over and sit down and have a glass of wine. Thank God. So Our panelists, first, Alicia Parker. Alicia or Alicia? Alicia Parker. She's with a senior planner with the City of Oakland. Alicia is a senior planner, City of Oakland Planning and Building Department. For over 10 years, she has been involved in numerous community participatory planning processes, including those involving health, impact assessments, and equity. Alicia recently welcomed a baby boy, congratulations to her family, and enjoys spending time with her husband, daughter, and dancing. I'll take you up on that. To bring to the panel the perspective of the city's planning department, please welcome Alicia Parker. Stephen Wong with Kaiser Permanente. Stephen is a staff project manager with Kaiser, overseeing the planning, design, and construction of a variety of capital projects. With over 30 years of experience, he has worked on all phases of building projects, specializing in project management, construction, documentation, and contract administration. Stephen, or as it says here in the bio, Wong, which I never understand why they do that, Wong has taught and lectured throughout the West Coast and Asia, including the Academy of Art, Autodesk, and UC Berkeley Extension. To bring to the panel the perspective of owner and client, please welcome Stephen Wong. Adam Winig with Arcsine. It's just funny, I have to say this. I mean, the bio is right in front of me, but I can't help myself. Adam, it says here, started Arcsine with Daniel in 2006. And I just remember calling on them for the first time in like 2007, literally a 2-person office in the same space. But you like multi-generations of acquiring more space in the same space. Yeah. And it's just so amazing to see him be part of and grow. And like I said, what we took into consideration for all of these panelists, a very active role in the downtown community of Oakland. So having said that, Adam's focus on designing responsive and engaging environments began with his work at Gensler, San Francisco, and Brayton Hughes Design Studio. A partner at Oakland-based Arcsine since 2006, Adam has been leading hospitality and restaurant projects throughout the Bay Area for the past decade, including Duende and Calavera in downtown Oakland. His commitment to thoughtful contextual architecture and design, coupled with the ability to bring the design and construction teams together around common goals, results in completed projects that both support and enhance the surrounding environments. To bring to the panel the perspective of design and architecture and creation of environments, please welcome Adam Winig. And now, I get to hand it over to Laura Guido-Clark, founder of LGC Design and Project Color Core. Laura has long understood that color speaks volumes and can be felt on an emotional level. Her ability to translate color's conscious and unconscious influences has helped companies such as Herman Miller, Google, Samsung, and Toyota. In 2011, Laura founded Project Color Core, a nonprofit organization dedicated to revitalizing urban neighborhoods with paint and pattern. In 2017, Laura founded Love Good Color, which I can't wait, her revolutionary new color tool and methodology that fuses science with the senses. Please welcome our moderator for tonight, Laura Guido-Clark.
Thank you. I feel so lucky to be here and to be the moderator. I'm deeply moved by this topic of wellness, this quality or state of being, in good health, but something that's actively sought after, that we have to make this decision to actually do. And I was also moved by the people that were invited to be part of this panel and how they represent on a macro level, from the city level to this health provider that's doing really wonderful things to the environment. And that you're all representing these points of view that I think are so prescient right now. And it's also wonderful because we're starting to measure these things, right? Before it was, we're measuring, product and productivity and dollars, and now we're thinking about wellness and we're thinking about happiness. And I think that we care more deeply about the human beings involved in space and in time and in cities. So I wanted to start off with you, Alicia, because I feel that from a city level, it would be very easy in a governmental process to lose the dynamic of a city, to make it be homogenous or perhaps feel that it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So could you maybe share with us how the city of Oakland actually makes sure that it doesn't happen?
Sure. Well, it is not easy to overlook the people of Oakland. I'm a policy planner for the city. I work in long-range planning documents, and so just a bit of what that is. We work on specific and area plans. So we write new zoning rules. We look at sort of the art and culture of the area. We look at transportation, open space. And we create documents that guide an area over sort of a 25-year planning horizon. And it's very participatory. We're getting better at our engagement. We're being more inclusive and engaging more deeply. So those are the sort of types of planning processes that we do. And so in order to sort of keep this sort of idea of who Oakland is and maintain an authentic sort of spirit, it involves kind of a process component as well as tools. So I'll kind of go over those things. In terms of the process, what we do is we look at baseline conditions. I'm sure it's the same when you sort of enter into a new space and think about how you want to design it. So you just sort of assess what's there. We're turning more now, it's sort of to the equity. So who is there in addition to sort of the physical characteristics, we're thinking about who is there. And as an example of that, we have prepared, so right now we have a planning process for the downtown Oakland area, so that it stretches from Jack London up to 27th Street and over to the lake and over to the border of 980. And we've prepared a disparity analysis, which is basically an assessment for the purposes of this discussion of health disparities. So we have identified sort of the demographics and the people who are here and some of the health disparities of the people, and really thinking about over time, right? It's not just about people who are here now, because that might have changed very recently, but who has been here over the course of a couple of decades. And thinking about the health indicators, including things that we have data for. So you're talking about what's measurable, how can we assess the quality of life, the sort of experience that people have. And so that it is a sort of matter of what data is available. So we're looking at health data from the county public health department. So looking at things like asthma rates, obesity rates, diabetes rates, things like that. And those are also, can be fairly well correlated to the built environment, and thinking about, is there safe places to walk? Is the perception of safety an inhibitor to walking? Thinking about whether or not there are trees to help buffer some of the the air quality concerns. So that is a document that's new. It also talks about sort of the economic drivers, and thinking about who's standing to gain in the city, in the downtown of tomorrow, and how can we better prepare people who have generational ties to Oakland for the downtown of tomorrow. So that kind of is a bit about sort of maintaining that authenticity and that spirit of Oakland. In terms of the tools, it talked about sort of a disparity analysis that kind of rolls up into a larger racial equity impact assessment, which is kind of a new kind of phenomenon in the field of planning, and really thinking about, for the strategies that we do develop, whether they be for the physical design, for the economic development strategy, for the housing strategy, who stands to gain and who stands to lose, and really thinking and really kind of naming it and digging deep into why, right? So, forcing conversations about race in order to normalize them, right? In order to sort of address the disparities. And then, of course, in terms of design, we have design guidelines, and we, I think, what has been more common over the course of planning is to prepare health impact assessments. And so the result of health impact assessments, again, very community participatory, identifying, using data to identify sort of the health impacts of our various land use decisions. And so the result of that is often to think about, the active, I'm sure you guys will probably talk more about this, but how active, a building is, how does it foster and facilitate physical activity, as well as the quality and health of materials, so that we sort of manifest that in the planning department by, through design guidelines and sort of evaluating projects. So in terms of sort of the government process, we are certainly getting better at involving the community and making sure that we hear and that we hopefully reflect the shared values of the community in our planning processes. So
It's really interesting because you're talking about processes that actually lead to the maintenance of authenticity and what really Oakland is. And Adam, I'm going to ask you because Duende, Calavera, Dave mentioned both of those. How do you make sure, as Oakland is growing and changing as a designer, that you have your pulse on what that growing and changing Oakland really is?
So, our office, like you said, has been in Oakland for about 12 years, and so we've seen Oakland change a lot. And one of the things that we try to do is just listen to our clients as much as we can. A lot of the clients that we've had the chance to work with in Oakland are local people that are either from around here or grew up around here or have fairly strong roots and a desire to be here in Oakland. So Oakland's kind of unique, and it might be changing a little bit now where it wasn't the high profile international or national corporations that were coming here looking to do stuff. It was, when we started, it was kind of the opposite. It was like Oakland was begging for some retail box to get here, and everyone would say, no way, we're not leasing in Oakland. And so our first project of real note in Oakland was Rudy's Can't Fail Cafe, which was exciting for a lot of levels. It was, so the Fox Theater, which I can see from where I'm sitting, was sort of, at least from my perspective, one of the projects that really kind of kicked off Uptown. And when that thing started being renovated, there was some nightlife, and there was a lot of positivity revolving around Oakland. And then Rudy's Can't Fail Cafe had its roots in Emeryville. They had a little sort of roadside diner, and one of the owners is also the bassist for Green Day. So, these guys started, there's like 5 owners, and one guy was a mill worker whose warehouse was next to Green Day, where they used to practice before they got big. And so we're dealing with these guys that have been in Oakland forever, and they had a pretty good feel for what the city wanted and kind of needed. They also had their own sort of design aesthetic based on the first Rudy's. And so we were able to sort of pick that up. And if you go into Rudy's, it's pretty bootstrappy. I can't remember exactly what year that was completed. It was probably like 2010 or 11 or something around there. And we used the banquettes are painted plywood, and they've got flip up where you can store stuff. And we did like a fake CMU wall to kind of represent what was happening in Emeryville. And so that was pretty bootstrappy, low budget, a lot of punk rock themes and things like that. And then if you sort of look at how the work has evolved, it's kind of from my perspective at least, it's more of our clients kind of taking us there. I mean, we're on the ground here, so we get to kind of be a part and see what's happening, but I'm not the cool guy that's out all the time on the nightlife, and I don't totally know what's going on. So, and then the next project after that was Duende, and Paul Canales was also an Oakland guy, and he was also into music, and he really got Oakland. Before he started working with us on Duende, he had 2 local Oakland artists, a woman, Sam Strand, and another guy, Peter St. Lawrence, who had collected all these images, and they had talked about the concept of Duende and dark versus light and good versus evil, and that sort of transcendence of what it means to be in the Duende, sort of in the zone. And so, but none of them had ever opened a restaurant before. And they had all these really cool ideas, and we looked at 3 or 4 spaces with them, and when we finally found the Duende space, it was an architect's office that had moved to San Francisco because San Francisco address meant maybe you'd get, more high-profile projects, so they went to San Francisco. So it was like glass conference rooms, and we just stripped the building down. One of the words we used at that time was honesty.
Yeah.
And we wanted the place to feel real. I mean, Oakland's always been a place that feels real,
Yeah.
at least to me and a lot of people that are here. And we wanted it to be honest, and we wanted it to be equal. So, he's got the words sangre igual, which is equal blood. And essentially it's like, hey, I want this place, Paul wanted to make the best food he could make, and he wanted a place where anybody could come in and would feel welcome. So you wouldn't feel intimidated with tablecloths and all that kind of stuff. And so then, during construction, we brought in local people, local contractors. Back then, the big thing was, hey, reclaimed wood. So, if you look in there's a lot of reclaimed wood in there. It's old barns from Northern California and stuff like that. And then, as the projects evolved, I think Calavera was sort of maybe the next sort of marker, and that was, again, very artistic driven. So Oakland's a fairly artistic town, and there's a lot of creative people here. And so, these guys, Chris Pastina and his team, wanted to open a spot that was authentic to Oaxacan Mexican food, and they wanted to display local art. They wanted, mezcal was kind of becoming a big thing. They wanted, over 200 SKUs of mezcal. So we designed that space where the artwork could be sort of front and center. We tried to sort of bring down a lot of the interior materials and let some of the artwork be the color and the pops. So we designed it that way. And again, brought in local people to do a lot of the things. So there's a wall in there that has sort of like kind of subtle skull reliefs, and that's by a woman who's from San Francisco who does really unique plaster work. And so I think if you kind of follow your clients, you start to get these you start to meet people and deal with people that are here and local. All the furniture is from wood and duck, so it's all close by. And then if you kind of follow the trajectory, we did agave. And agave is really interesting. It's much more refined. With agave, now we're starting to have people that are coming to Oakland, and they want the place to feel, fairly well put together. So we started working with them all the way from designing their menus and their logos. But the mural in there is of Octavio's, who's the chef. It's his grandfather from Mexico. And it's, in the Caper Center for Social Justice. And so there's all these things about it that I think really happened because we're in Oakland. And so I feel like a lot of kind of the way we stay in tune with Oakland is to, we're lucky enough to continue to win work with folks that are here, but people that are sort of out there and paying attention. And if you listen to your clients and sort of everybody else who's out there, you kind of get this sense. So, it's sort of interesting. Our work, I think, has evolved with the way Oakland's demographics are changing a bit, and I think it's just going to be really interesting to see where that all goes.
Right. Well, you bring up something interesting because you talk about the sense of honesty, right?
Yeah.
And honesty, and a lot of the things you discussed comes through the history of being part of something and really allowing that to shine through, but also you talked about materials in a big way. And so I wanted to turn the conversation to Stephen about materials, because I feel that Kaiser has taken the lead on healthy materials, and I want to have you explain to all of us your point of view on healthy materials, and also what was the impetus of you to really kind of own this segment.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to be here. Just even before I begin to answer the question, just a show of hands of who here has worked on Kaiser projects. I'm just rather curious. Wow, quite a few. Thank you for your patience. Let me get your business card later. It's a very interesting question, because as a healthcare organization, it would be a hypocrisy if we wouldn't be on the forefront of healthy materials, because that is what we're here to do. And I think if I just asking people around the office, we started the idea of healthy materials back in the mid-90s, and it was purely just an idea of how can we minimize contact from patients to materials, such as the gloves that the doctors might use, down to the mercury in the thermometers that we no longer use. And that was just a little grassroots, so to speak, movement in which that led to more thoughtful thinking products of how we could articulate our environment. But it became, honestly, it became more cliche, because with LEED and all that, it just became, that's what you should do. And I think when we think of building buildings and designing buildings and moving forward, we have to think more holistically. So as you folks help us design more healthier living spaces, healing spaces, and places where people work and operate, we're not talking about just where's the carpet from and where's the material source from? Are we locally hiring crews? When I was a more green architect back in the day, right? Remember those days? When I was a more green architect, they used to call it, my principal taught me that only about 10% of the resources used in a building is really for construction or building the building. It's the 90% that's the life of the building that you as designers, when we're done, we walk away and says, here's the keys, and you go operate your facility. But that facility is around, hopefully, a good 50, 60, 70 years. And that's I think the next avant-garde step is not only do you set us up to win, for example, orient the building in a proper way. Don't put all glass in a south-facing facade. Give us those healthy, environmentally sound materials. And that's just really the baseline. But then the next step is how do we, as an organization, maintain healthy products, anywhere from cleaning the beds when a patient's complete and discharged, all the way from maintenance of the slab floors on a day-to-day basis. Those are the things we really don't think of. It's really an afterthought. We plan it, we design it, we hire you guys to help us design it, and we draw it, and we build it, and then we think, well, wait a minute, what product did we install, and what cleaning product will be necessary for the next 40 years? Does it contain materials that are really unhealthy for the environment? That is the next step. And so holistically, we really need to think through that. So for you all to help us, you gotta ask us as the client the hard questions. What product do you want to use? And how do you clean that product? I'm on a project right now that is a first of its kind in Kaiser called, it's gonna be a med psych. Patients who have psychiatric as well as physical conditions, they're going to be admitted there. And we're asking the hard questions because we brought in EVS early. We brought in folks who are taking care of the facility after you leave. How do we clean this? Do we have to use XYZ material? And what does that contain? So those are the great questions we're asking during design and early in construction. We should have caught it earlier, but I'm glad we caught it now, so that we can address those. We just had a very heart-to-heart, face-to-face meeting with EVS Environmental Services saying, how are we going to clean this product? Show me the materials. So we're actually going through and eliminating a lot of these fabrics and materials. I actually brought up the naive question. I called some manufacturers and I says, well, why aren't we coating these fabrics with non-stain items? And it was very clear. Kaiser doesn't allow it. And I asked you at the time, I didn't realize that. I'm still learning a lot. Kaiser won't allow it because of the chemical compound that's involved in it. So we're turning towards a synthetic rubber, faux leather. We're turning into some products that don't require that harsh cleaning. So those are just sort of the cutting edge things that we want to achieve. They're not exciting, they're cleaning products, but I'm here endorsing cleaning products. But my boss is right. You know, back X amount of years ago, my boss is absolutely right. Is what we do matters. We design fantastic buildings that lift the spirit, heal the persona of a person who's not in the best state. But when we do that, that's really only a small piece of it. That building is going to last our lifetimes, hopefully, if it's built right. So that's sort of the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that thinking, that 360-degree holistic thinking, has made you leaders in the industry. And truly, when you say something, it becomes a standard. All of us know that. When Kaiser says this is ending, we all know it's ending, right? I mean, that's just the way that it is. But it brings up this whole idea of what is leadership in our respective fields. And I want to ask you, Alicia, like, not everybody's going to, do a LEED certified building, but what do you do as a city to kind of encourage a greater sense of sustainability and sustainable practices?
Yeah, well, we definitely have incorporated a lot of sort of the green building requirements into projects of all sizes. So although LEED might not be required, a certain level of sort of just environmental responsiveness and energy efficiency is required. So, we have that from the sort of requirements perspective. And I think we're still, working towards being a leader in the field by, we recently approved a electronic vehicle charging station. So we now have rules for that, and they're required in new development. And then, we have a bike parking ordinance that sort of is a requirement. So, and I think that is, another way of just kind of, taking a holistic approach to thinking about sustainability. And then in terms of requirements, I mean, that's, we are the regulators, so it's all related to the requirements that we set. Reducing parking requirements and, so that we don't have as much pollution entering the atmosphere. So those are some of the ways that we're doing it. I mean, I think there's, in terms of, like the carrot and stick, and, so when we have a renovation, a lot of the new development downtown is sort of the renovation of older buildings, and sort of like incentivizing that by having an easier process, an easier review process. That might be arguable, depending on your perspective, but that is our intention. And reusing materials and things like that. So we do have like recycling ordinances and things. So I think that to the degree that we are trying to sort of, improve our sustainability and our commitment to the environment and to the people who occupy that environment, we're doing that. We have the bike share and the car share, and so those are all, sort of newer things that are coming online.
That's so great. I wanted to ask you, Adam, about leadership and about this whole idea of how do you advocate? I mean, if a client isn't asking for it, how do you advocate for these, for wellness and healthy materials and holistic thinking?
I feel like a lot of our clients don't use the word, hey, I want to design my space for wellness, but it's interesting. I think I don't know if Stephen or Alicia was hitting on it, but 10 years ago, I feel like wellness was defined a little bit by, hey, are you guys using a material that doesn't have VOCs, and we look at it on sort of a micro, small level of what it meant for wellness. And now I feel like wellness is sort of defined, at least I think through our designs, in kind of three main ways, where we look at sort of emotional, physical, and even spiritual in some ways. So, physical wellness I think is pretty easy to define, and I think it's a pretty easy sell. So, hey, do you want your building to be more efficient and use less water and less power and save you money? Most people answer yes to that. I mean, we're in California, which is pretty great because we're on the forefront of sustainability in terms of this country, especially, and the world. And so a lot of the regulations that have been set up on a local level or statewide level are really fantastic. Sometimes, bigger developers have a little hard time getting their heads around that. But, I mean, who wouldn't want the lights to dim when the sun comes out and them to get brighter when the sun goes down without having to change it? Or who wouldn't want to accidentally leave the lights on? So I feel like a lot of the regulations that are in place are a great baseline. And I'm confident that California will keep pushing that. So the physical stuff, is less of a hard sell, I think, than it used to be. And then, in terms of the emotional, it gets a little bit harder how to define that. But I think when we start thinking about wellness today, especially how you're talking about it, you know, people walking, we've all got our devices, and now there's a lot of talk about kids growing up are disconnected, and you know, I feel like that's wellness, and people are, you know, feeling like they're not involved in a community as much and all these things. And so, you know, you can design spaces like we did Modern Coffee on 19th Street here, where, you know, we purposely designed the counters where there wasn't really a place you could sort of sit by yourself and not be bothered. You kind of had to interact with some of your neighbors that might work in the building next to you, and maybe that spawns a conversation about what you do and what they do, and maybe something positive comes out of it. So, you know, I think there's ways to incorporate different kinds of wellness based on different kinds of design, and then, you know, even on a spiritual level. So, you know, I think most of us, when we go into a restaurant or a cafe or even a hotel, we want, like, now the buzzword is experiential, right? People want a unique, authentic experience. Those are probably the words that you maybe see like the most in a lot of these design magazines. And so, you know, curating the individual experience for people. So, you know, you can systematically design that. And so I think I think a lot of the clients are open to that. I think when they sort of talk about what they want, they're saying that they want a lot of these things, which I've kind of taken from myself and my definition of wellness as a way to design that wellness. So, you know, you could purposely create an atmosphere that's quieter and more relaxing, and with the use of colors and lights, have a less stressful atmosphere that might be really appealing to someone at a certain period of the day for them. And on the flip side, you know, you can have like a really vibrant space that's super alive and energetic, and get someone kind of fired up. And so I think people are sort of hungry for a genuine experience where whatever they're missing at that particular moment, they can kind of fulfill that need. And so I think when we talk to our clients about how to do it on those different levels, as opposed to a little more cut and dry. I mean, what Stephen said is totally true in terms of, you know, I think I read about a whale that had 64 pounds of plastic in it yesterday.
Yes.
Maybe you guys,
Yes.
and it's like, you know, I mean, everywhere I look now, I'm like, all I see now is plastic after reading that article. But, and so there is the reality of all of those things, but then there's, I think, a whole nother realm of emotional and spiritual wellness that maybe that's a luxury that some of us, you know, in our particular circumstances even get to think about. But at least a lot of the spaces that we design are geared towards people that are looking to fill that void or enhance that part of their life. Yeah.
Well, I think it's all about, you know, human need. The things that you're talking about they're so relevant because human need, connection, all of those things are, that's why we're here. You know, we need to connect with one another. And so as we're looking to the future, how do you think of that in the context of Kaiser? How are you looking to the future in terms of health and wellness and materiality?
Thanks for asking. I want to start off with a story that Terry, our architect over there, reminded me to tell. Is I think we did this project in 2015, 2016, and it was one of the first projects I worked on when I was at Kaiser. And it was a women's center for radiology in Union City. And it was an opportunity to introduce new mammography rooms, a stereotactic room, and just basically imaging. And let's be honest, it's not a place of happiness, right? We go there, you would go there, and it wouldn't be, you wouldn't want to go there. It's not a fun experience because of the situation you're in, and it's just no way around it. So Terry and our team decided to put our hats on and figure out, well, how can we make this space just that much more interesting and that much more fun? And, you know, I appreciate Adam speaking about, you know, the spiritual and the emotional uplift. And I'm very proud of the fact that we designed something that is just that. It's not very large, maybe about 4,000 square feet, but I handpicked the vase that goes in there. I handpicked the tile. Terry handpicked the colors. We hired Laurel Sprigg from San Francisco to hand sew the pillows that go there. And so we jokingly inside Kaiser call it the spa. And so I'm very touched by just the fact that it's called the spa. And the ladies who go there, I think they have a little bit different experience than typically a radiology department. I'm secretly hoping my wife can travel down there to get a mammography one day and see what she thinks, but that's a bit of a trek, but maybe one day. So I think that in itself is an opportunity. So anytime you come up with a project, I would really encourage you to think through, it's not just Kaiser, but any project you touch, is what is the experiential, what is the opportunity for you to uplift a human spirit? Just for that 5-minute check-in, the 20-minute check-in, the half-an-hour quick bite, or the 2-hour sit-down and have dinner with somebody, I think it's so important. And if you're not smelling the off-gassing, you're not feeling that the environment is unhealthy, how much better for that? It's a very timed question that Laura asked, because just recently our Vice President, Don Orndorff of National Facility Services, he had said, and he had ordered a mandate that by 2020, all projects will be carbon neutral. By 2025, all projects will be carbon positive. Now, just the fact that he said that made us really scared, because he's from the Navy and he's built a lot of buildings, and I think he knows exactly what he said. And the mandate that's upon us and upon all you guys is a very serious impact. And we're in planning stages of a new medical office building that I'll probably be managing down south. And that is right up the alley. So I'm thinking platinum, I'm thinking carbon positive, I'm thinking how do we get energy back into our system, but not only that, but also enough to pass on to our neighbors. So that is a significant impact. So when I mentioned the idea of a global change and a holistic environment, this is going to be one of the projects, and we're developing these projects as we speak, of the next gen, so to speak, the next gen of healthy living and healthy building. So I think it's a hard challenge. To be honest, it was so much easier just to get some lead points and be done with it. But now it's going to be an incredible challenge. So I think we all have to sharpen our pencils and do our homework even that much more in order to hit not just those points, but what does it mean to have enough energy so that we can give back to the environment? What does it mean to have that philosophy? So even as a patient, as a person who's never stepped foot in this new medical office building, come in and have the experience of, I can park my bike there. Oh, I see some solar panels out there. I see a cogen. Well, they may not know what cogen is, but I see a potential. What is that cogen machine? And maybe we have some plaques that identify what those are. That is the next level of thinking that we want to encourage, not just for patients, but also staff. Doctors and nurses and managers and MAs who may not really care or understand what architecture or design or healthy living is about. Maybe that gives them an opportunity. They go home and they share it with their families, and they go home and share it with all those other professions that they do. And that sort of is a global movement. It already has started. It's just this is taking it to another step. So Don's right, and it is the next step, and I think it's going to be an amazing challenge for the next decade.
Yeah, that's always those scary things, right, that make us stronger and better. And if somebody doesn't put that out there, then we continue on our path and we never grow and we never learn. So as a new mother, I wanted to ask, what is your hope for the future for your child, and what does the city look like?
That is not the question that I was.
I know. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to do this. I know, but I get so excited about everything. I could go back and ask about other things, but this has been very important.
Yeah.
Please answer the question.
Thank you, Laura, for the question. Ooh. It's the wind is cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that from working on the downtown Oakland specific plan, so working on an Oakland specific project, my focus, my lens is totally about Oakland, and so thinking about how to ensure the diversity and to improve circumstances for the marginalized would be my hope for Oakland. from the built environment to, you know, the homes that they're living in, to the occupations that he is, you know, employed in, as a, you know, biracial child, you know, man that he'll become. Definitely hoping that there is, you know, ample opportunity for him and all of the other youth that are coming up in Oakland, and
Yeah.
you know, elsewhere.
Yeah, but that's the thing, it's all like, you see it and you create it, you know, I mean, and that's the best part of this, is that, you know, what you're seeing will be created because people like you can envision it. And I'm thinking about your design firm as it's growing and morphing, you know, hopes and dreams of what your contributions are, and, you know, making things holistic for the people who work there. You know, how do you keep them inspired to do this type of work?
Well, some of my employees are here, so.
Okay. let me
guys
go
wanna
out
come
in
up
the
and answer
audience
that?
and ask you. No, I'm kidding.
You know, Daniel and I have always tried to do something philanthropic. You know, so when we started in Oakland, we felt that essentially Oakland basically welcomed us. You know, Oakland didn't really turn anybody away. At least that's how we felt.
Yeah.
San Francisco was a little more intimidating, and there were you know, more barriers there for sure. So one of the things we've started doing, this is another question that's not here, but we're off script now.
Sorry.
No, but it's been great. You know, like our office is right on the corner of 13th and Broadway, and you know, there's a lot of people hanging out on that corner kind of all day long, and a lot of bad things happen on that corner. And those are the people that, you know, live in the community that, you know, we've sort of felt like, hey, we in a way moved into their community, and so we've started, this will be our second year where we've started an internship program with the high schools of Oakland Unified School District. And you know, I just feel, you know, Daniel and I, you know, we felt that the design community is not well represented right here, yeah, within Oakland, from people that grew up in Oakland. Now Liz might disagree because she grew up in Oakland, not too far from our office, and
Okay.
that's not why we hired her, but that. But we've actually targeted some of the tougher high schools in some of the less fortunate neighborhoods. And, you know, the way it works in the design community a lot is that, you know, if you come from some resources, you might be able to apply for an internship, and you might be able to say, hey, I'll work for you guys for free. And then, I mean, that already is separating a bunch of people that don't have that luxury. So, you know, we always pay our interns unless they're getting school credit or something like that, and that it's part of their course. But so that's one thing that we started doing. You know, we're big believers in that diversity in opinions across all kinds of lines, gender, race, socioeconomic, you name it, will provide better solutions. And the way we design has always been collaborative. And so if we can get more people thinking about solutions from, you know, different areas and SKUs of the city, you know, it's only going to be better. And, you know, without getting political, it's just sad that we don't see that, you know, on a national level happening these days. But that's one thing that we're trying to do. And I think Oakland has the potential where you just know there's so much talent right here in Oakland, and there's so many people that probably never got the opportunity, or maybe don't even know what designers get to do, and they might be doing stuff at home that would be amazing. And so, you know, if we can reach 1 or 2 kids a year, you know, that hopefully will transcend, and eventually 25 years from now, maybe a kid that grew up and went to, you know, high school in West Oakland is running a design firm here in town and gets to design the new high school or something like that. So that's one of the things we're doing for that,
Yeah, it's actually really moving. I love that. And I think it is about, you know, it keeps coming back to this idea of a circle and how everything starts and begins as we're one, you know, and the more we think like that, the better that it is. Certainly you're employing a lot of that thinking. I know that there are things about materiality that I probably haven't asked you. I know about compliance. and things that have been more than tough. Could you share a little bit of that with us?
Sure. I think the easiest way to answer that is, being in the healthcare industry, there's a difficult line between finding a product or a line of products that last a life of a building and that are formaldehyde-free, PVC-free, chemicals that I can't even pronounce. Sorry, free. And it is a fine line, but we try to make every opportunity. And like we were joking earlier, if Kaiser asks it and we mandate it, it really becomes something that manufacturers really need to adhere to. I was just researching. We actually have over 75 million square feet of property in the United States.
Can you say that one more time? Because I thought it was so staggering. I think you need to hear this one more time.
75 million square feet, and I can't even fathom how. I was just
Yeah.
thinking how many Salesforce skyrises that is, but.
Yeah, I know,
that, yeah.
I know.
So I think when Kaiser requests for a carpet line to investigate and to be PVC free for their backing, or any manufacturer, they really take it to heart, and it's a good way. It's a good thing. It's a combination of doing the right thing for not just Kaiser, but doing the right thing with the Kaiser requests, but globally opening it up to anybody and everybody who wants to use it. So I think that's a really good thing. And we don't really tout that because it's something that's best for the world. But we really is an encouragement that Kaiser does care enough to spend its resources and frankly its weight around the world to ask manufacturers to just do just that. And we are nowhere near close to being there, and it's going to take a lot more work, because we're still, literally as we speak, we're still investigating opportunities for better carpets. We're still looking at opportunities for better casework. We're not there yet, but I think that's where you guys and your brains come in and help us through that. And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I can't even begin to fathom how much real estate it is that we have the awesome responsibility to manage. And it goes back to what I said earlier. We build this 75 million, and then what group of people maintains that for the life of the building times 50 years? So it's a staggering amount. Then on top of that 75 million, we take on the responsibility of renovating that every 5, 10, sometimes we don't touch it for 20 years. We're working on projects on campuses that, this is from the 80s. And you remember what the 80s looked like, right? Design-wise, right? So we're sort of, we're going through the halls doing this, and we see the carpets from the 80s, and we see the paint from the 80s, and we says, we could do better than that. And so we have that chance to come back full circle and says, let's do it better, right? And so it's a nice opportunity, but it's also a reflection of when I do site walks with our architects and our interiors, that says, this is lessons learned right in front of you, right? This is lessons learned.
Yeah.
I grew up, I'll share this, I grew up painting sometimes. We couldn't afford painters, so we painted our own house. But we painted with oil-based, high VOC, probably lead-based paint, and that's why I'm only 5'7". I could have been taller.
But it looked good. That paint was really beautiful, I have to say.
That paint survived me and my mom and my dad. It's still there.
Yeah.
So, truth be said, we would love that kind of quality paint on our walls at Kaiser, but without all the chemical issues and without all the nasty stuff that goes in there. And we would love to be on the cutting edge of having a manufacturer produce that for the world.
Well, you talk about doing right, which I think is such an important goal, to have that sense of vision. How do each of you, if you could share maybe how you do right by yourself, like what are your personal practices for wellness?
You want to start that?
I know that wasn't on the thing either, but
Really going
I know, but I mean, it would be nice to share because it comes from yourself. You start there and it comes out, so I'm just curious if each of you could share.
I'll start. My employees know that I don't go to work on Tuesday mornings anymore. And it took me a really long time. I'm 45 years old now, and a year ago, I think I finally realized the goal of working as hard as I possibly can every day is maybe not the goal I always want. And so I take Tuesday mornings off now. I drop my kids at school. I typically go to the gym after that. Then I shower in a quiet house and drink my coffee and read the New York Times and then go to work. And it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody can do that or not, but that was one thing I've done. I don't know how long I'm going to do that, but gave me a personal space that I just needed in my life at this particular time. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing, that one thing though, and what sometimes it takes for us to convince ourselves to do it, right?
Yeah.
And what it really means to you, and what it actually makes your firm better. This thing that you thought you were so fearful of doing is actually making it better.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
I have a similar, sort of similar scenario. My mother was watching my baby, and she couldn't, she had to stop. And so I had to kind of work up the courage to ask my boss to have Wednesdays off at 2:30, right, so that I could pick them up from school, and daycare. So, but it's turned out that it was, kind of like anxiety provoking, but it's been so. I mean, they were okay. It was, with it, I'm making up the hours, but just having that weekday like daytime time with my two kids, we go to the park and I just pretend like I don't work. It is absolutely a spirit lifter in the middle of the week. It's just great.
That's so great. Yeah, it's so great.
I think Stephen's working 60 hours a week now.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, I was just about to say that. Near 30 years of my life was spent in what Adam does is in architecture, and boy, I can remember the times where I stayed until 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning and just cranked out drawings. I remember being an eager beaver, so a lot of times you get my boss coming out, and since I was the lowest paying guy in the office, he would come at me at 5 p.m. and says, "So, any plans this evening?" He knew the answer, and it was no. So I worked double shifts, and I got takeout, and it was really exhausting, and I'm sure you guys all know that. So I decided the easy way out was to turn to the dark side and work for the client. So, and truth be told, that's why I'm at Kaiser. But boy, I've got 3 kids and an awesome, gorgeous wife, and it's Kaiser. To be all serious, Kaiser is an environment where they really believe in a balance between work and home, work and life, and so they have this. I think it's an unwritten rule that you can't repeat. Is if you come to work for 1 minute and you go home, that's work, and you don't write down PTO. So there are going to be people taking advantage of that. So, but what I do sometimes is because my son needs to be dropped off at school on Tuesdays, because my wife started working part-time, I'll do that, and I'll pick up a conference call on my drive in, and that's just reassuring that Kaiser can do that. Plus, I get to hang out with my kids when I come home from work at about 6. 6 is a good day time. It used to be 10 or 11. And I get to hang out, horse around, beat up my kids, roll around the carpet, and they're at this great fun age at, 7, 9, and 11. So it's a lot of kids and a lot of ages.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. So we have a great time. And I mentioned that it's a combination of spiritual as well, so I consider myself a spiritual person. So healing the inner person is a very essential thing for your soul. So I get that. I get my kids for the outer exercise, and I get Kaiser being the work-life balance. So I think it's all good.
That's all good. I love that. That's all good. That's what we need to be doing. So I guess what I wanted to do was to maybe open this up a little bit to the audience for questions. But I just wanted to say to all of you that you are very inspiring to hear, and the work that you're doing really matters, and it matters to all of us, and it matters to making a healthier, better world, so we're very grateful. So love to open it up to questions.
I was wondering if you are seeing the trend that you're setting as Kaiser with this PVC-free policy and no finishes, and et cetera. Do you see other healthcare providers starting to look at that as possibilities for them as a for anybody else?
I do. I frankly do. Every so often I'll get comments from people who come from outside into Kaiser saying that there's a lot of healthcare organizations that I won't mention that want to be like Kaiser in terms of sustainability, in terms of how we manage projects. We're in a unique position where we actually have internal project managers and internal construction crews, which if you work for Kaiser, you know that. It's very unique in the industry. And so they sometimes you hear the ideas of they want to emulate that. So yes, and the fact that even if they don't, they have the opportunity to do just that by the fact that if we have a Tandis producing a line of carpet that is more sustainable, why, and it's open to anybody who wishes to purchase it, why wouldn't they do that? So I would just don't understand if they don't.
Okay. So my question actually is for all three of you because you have unique work experiences, but it's a big picture thinking. If you could create a class in college that would be about healthier futures, as a planner, what would you do? As an architect, what would you do? As an owner, what class would you see that our system needs to bring in that isn't, teaching people about LEED and sustainability? It's about healthier. How can we be healthier?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, it's funny that you ask, because I actually do teach a class. UC Berkeley Extension for a plug there. I think the main thing that I see from students, and these aren't students who are 17 and just coming into college. The environment that I teach in are usually folks who have finished a career and says, I'm bored of business, I'm bored of making my millions, I want to go into design. So that's what they do. And over again, I see, and this actually doesn't seem like it has anything to do with greening our environment, but it does. It's actually, we all need to be better versed in communicating with the client. I find that working with designers and architects and teaching, we are great at designing. We are great at drawing. We are great at building and drawing construction documents, but we really stink at communication. We really do. And I was horrible at it. And I was grateful for going into project management sites. I really didn't have to communicate a whole lot. But I think communication is key. And when I'm teaching a class now that is a design class, but I'm also teaching them how to sell the design by communicating verbally. Graphically, they're awesome. We just need to have them up their game on how to communicate verbally. And the reason I say that, as Terry asked, is the reason I say this is, if they're articulate in communicating how they design, they're going to be articulate in communicating to a client who may not be so interested in spending 5 or 10% more on a greener material. That is key. You may not need to convince Kaiser because we want to do that. But if it's a small restaurant or a small hotel and they may not really understand what that all means and what's beneficial to them, I think having those communication skills to be able to tell them the percentage of low VOC, the ability to, over 30 years, the cost benefit of sustainability. Those things, if articulated well, you're going to sell your product.
So as an owner, I think in regards to your question with sort of how to teach or what kind of class we'd want about wellness, I find when I engage with, it could be developers or clients, about return on investment, and if you kind of phrase it that way, a lot of times they will see the added value through good design in their projects. So if I could structure a class, it would be something like how to design sort of the spaces that people feel are left over. I think I had a conversation today. It was with a national developer, and we started kind of really connecting on how to design the spaces that are typically sort of left over, like the back of a building, or the 8 feet of sidewalk next to a parking lot, and those aren't always thought of as design opportunities, but there are these little kind of cracks and crannies within projects that, if designed smart, can be really fun spaces. And so it would probably be something around, going through either the urban or suburban environment where that particular school was located and finding these little nooks and crannies and creating some kind of oasis pocket. I think that would be really fun. And, it could provide opportunities to engage with community members about, hey, oh, you guys don't think there's enough parks here? What about this, sidewalk here that's 30 feet wide, that, whatever. So, yeah, I like that could be cool.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah.
I would build on what each of you has said in terms of really kind of bolstering our communication skills and thinking about, from my perspective, when we're thinking about healthy communities, we're thinking more about why there are disparities and sort of kind of drilling down on that a little more deeply so that we can really address why there might be, barriers to opportunity for some that, really prevent a healthy lifestyle from happening. Because it seems like in your traditional planning kind of curriculum, we talk about kind of like the history of various, planning movements and, environmental movements, civil rights, but really kind of going a little more deeply and really requiring it of everyone, not just maybe your policy side of things, because I think what has happened is that there's like a disconnect, and you guys might have a perspective on this, between sort of the design and the policy and the social sort of context or policy framework. And as a planner, we really have to reconcile that. We have to say, look, how do we communicate that this design addresses sort of closing disparity gaps. So if our designers are more well rooted in the history and in the why that is good, not only for people who would be directly impacted, but for everybody, right? I think we could, we would improve things immensely. So I hope that made sense, but what I'm trying to say is that there needs to be more communication skills of our designers, and there needs to be more emphasis in the history of why things got this way.
That is such an amazing point. I mean, yeah. God, thank you for that question. Any other questions? Boy, I love this. I'm so excited. I feel like Phil Donahue. And that does show
Is he still around?
Everybody's up here. Woo, woo. Yeah. I have a question. I'm sorry, forgotten your name. What kind of challenges do you have in your department right now where you're trying to do this 25-year growth plan and you have people that want to build a building yesterday, right? Like, it seems like Oakland is really looking at a lot of growth.
Right. I mean, it's very challenging. I mean, I think that from a more technical standpoint, the value of what we're doing to a developer is that we clear their environmental review hurdles for them. But how do we keep that authenticity? How do we sort of address gentrification, right? So, and also help with the future developments, because right now what's happening is that the community is negotiating on a case-by-case basis for their own interests, which is fair, right? But if we could, through a planning process, a more formalized process, address sort of community benefits and quality of life concerns that are directly impacting people who are going to be, hopefully living next to the development, if not, priced out. And this is not just, residents. This is, small businesses. This is nonprofit organizations. The impacts of the pressure on downtown Oakland are very, sort of widespread. So it's extraordinarily challenging, but I think that it's like, helping or kind of seeing the connections between people who are, already, offering internships and, employing those sustainable practices and sort of like creating more of a outward-facing ability to tap into that, maybe some technological way of understanding, where are those, synergies happening. But it's very challenging, and right now it's basically development is happening, and it's like I said, it's this one-off, case-by-case basis where the community is individually negotiating with developers.
Hi, this is a question for Stephen, particularly, I guess. You talked about the investment in the sort of long-term life of the building, and I'm wondering, does Kaiser ever engage in research? You have all of this real estate, as you said, to look at, we had this one treatment care facility in this place, let's look and see, post-occupancy evaluation, what's working there, not working there, and use that to inform other similar facilities you're building?
It's a really good question. We actually have multiple opportunities for that. We have a downtown group located right here in Oakland that is, one of their main priorities is to understand how a project has done, not only financially, but also longevity of the building, and are people satisfied and comfortable in their facilities. That's one opportunity. I think that's probably to be honest, that's the bigger opportunity, because they're dedicated to that. When it comes to me, who just simply manages the design and construction of particular projects, we then take their research and work with architects and designers to understand how could we do that better 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I think there's multiple opportunities, since we're such a large entity, that there's a lot of resources available and enough budget available to do that. So yes, so what we designed, say, 10 years ago, we've lesson learned that to the next 20 or 30 years, and it's a recurring cycle.
This is a similar question also for Stephen. I was wondering what sort of resources or maybe standards you might use to evaluate your material choices, and sort of how you've accumulated maybe your checklist of the good materials and then the off limits ones.
There is a whole website as a subset to Kaiser that I have not read the thousands of pages that are there, but it exists, and we actually ask all you guys, when you come in and take on a project, to be responsible for that. There are a significant amount of products, materials that we ask you not to use, and there are products that we've currently been testing. We have a Garfield Center in San Leandro that will actually go and test full-on mock-ups of, say, an OBGYN or operating room, that really full out. And that's an opportunity not just for doctors and designers and people like myself to come look and see what it works, but it also gives an opportunity for the carpet manufacturers, for the tile manufacturers, for the paint manufacturers to come in and test their products as well. So again, there's a lot of opportunities in different disparate ways to do that. One of which is that website that really is an accumulation of decades of research that identify what to use and what you should not use. And it's a lot of information there, to be honest, and I think you guys all know that once you surf through that. But it really gives a lot of tools so that if you were a new design firm coming into Kaiser, it wouldn't be like you're swimming against the tide. You would understand where to go, and you would just simply have to sit down and read through the research to tackle on your project. Thank you.
Alicia, how is Oakland road mapping technology and the way the technology is advancing versus its designs for planning for the future?
Do you mean from a city government perspective, or how we would interface with the community, or what exactly?
Well, I'm thinking of things more along the lines of sort of mobile networks that are advancing, as well as things like ride sharing and automated cars, and all of these things that technology, either at a consumer or a user level, is affecting the way that city operations are happening.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things come to mind. I mean, we're thinking of, from the way that we conduct outreach, I mean, now there's sort of apps where you can send text messages and to personally invite people to, sort of like, universal Wi-Fi, or, having some kind of a Wi-Fi zone downtown, to like drone flying areas. I mean, it's definitely changing the way that we have to think about, planning and the types of space for different types of uses. But I would say it's evolving, and I think particularly with the city of Oakland, and this is probably true of many jurisdictions, we lag far behind in our own technological capacity, and it's embarrassing, honestly. But, you know, and I think it not only is it embarrassing, it makes it more challenging to kind of meet the need that exists, right? So, you know, it's not great, but, you know, we're trying and we're becoming, better. So.
I vote for no drone flying zones. Anybody? Any burning desires?
David. I work for and have worked for a very large textile company that has partnered with Kaiser since, I'm going to date myself, 1997, when they first initiated a environmental program for their material vendors. And I remember at the time thinking that one of the first mandates was zero PVC. And all of us rolling our eyes like, yeah, like that's ever gonna happen, zero PVC. But what it did was, and I remember at the time, maybe it was Abelardo who had said, we have such a large community that we're designing for and that we serve that we really feel obligated to better our community. And so, of course, you know, by that influence, we have, over the last 20 years, developed products that now are just standards in the industry. And I feel like it was really a privilege. At the time, it was a pain to push ourselves that way. I mean, it almost seemed not doable. And because of that, it really was, you know, taking something that now has become national and international, just a requirement of what we do to do the better thing, because we are designing for wellness. And it started with sort of that seed here with Kaiser, that it trickles down and it makes us all step up, whether it's uncomfortable or it was uncomfortable, quite frankly. But we appreciate it, and it does, you know, it reaches out. I mean, everybody just influences, hopefully, everybody else to make a better place.
Any other questions before we wrap this wonderful night up? Thank you guys so much for coming. I do want to thank our sponsors, which is Carnegie Fabrics, Gensler, Unisource. On behalf of all of you guys taking your time, and thank you so much for your input and perspectives tonight, and Laura for everything. We did put together these wonderful wellness bags for you. I swear it wasn't a plug for Carnegie. The environmental bags that we ordered did not come in. Darn you, Prime. But in there is a Kume spa gift certificate, which is one that we tried to do everything as local as we could. And Kume's right down there on Grand. So we did want to thank them as well. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you so much, Laura. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed tonight.